Okay. How are you? How are you doing? I'm great. This evening, today is Friday. It's like 8. It's 8:03 Central here in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, you're privileged of having a great person, Abby, Abby Olando, right? And just having this conversation today will change our lives. I'm so excited for you to come through. On behalf of Kemen, we appreciate you as a founder of Kemen. We've been having this conversation for a long time, and for you to just be here is a blessing. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you for being here.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having this timely conversation. So I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Abigail Olando. I am a public speaker, a global public speaker. I am a moderator and I am a lover of life, living life to the fullest. I usually say I'm a student of life because every single day you learn something new beyond the four walls of the classroom. Life is constantly teaching you something each and every day. So I try to tap into that as much as possible.
Oh, that's beautiful. So what inspires you? Because we've been talking about mental health. There's so many people are struggling in a family, and you being a public speaker, somebody who communicates with so many people. What is that thing that kind of like take you to that level, man? And when I have this conversation, I want to be the best person on what I do, and especially having a conversation about family, mental health. So, what is that thing that drives you to do what you do?
I think for me, it's because I've seen how mental health has affected people in my personal life. And, when people talk about their stories, you do think it's far-fetched and you can't relate to it until it happens. So in high school, I had a best friend by the name Joy, and she was going through a lot at that time. It was in the middle of doing her mocks, and her father was in ICU, a very dire state. So for some reason, I feel like that created a lot of angst in her, and she started acting out. And seeing her go home, this is someone that I would spend most of my school days with. I had other friends, but she was my best friend. That affected me. Seeing her coming back, she had gained so much weight. She wasn't herself anymore, and seeing the anxiety, her shaking involuntarily, I think for me that did something, and it made me realize that indeed mental health is a thing. I don't think at that time I had the vocabulary to really understand what was happening to her, but I was woke enough to understand that there was an issue. And so having fast forward to 2020, the pandemic, where we now have all these conversations, I was able to connect two and two together. And I began to see the importance of having mental wellness as a whole. Because when you're not okay mentally, when you're not functioning mentally, then it's like a domino effect. It impacts every other thing you do, every other functionality within you is compromised. So I would say my best friend really made me realize how important mental health was.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you think when family is affected by the mental health, what do you think is the biggest dilemma on that?
When it comes to family, I think, let me just say from the Kenyan perspective, really, let me not talk about Africa, but I think it wasn't, mental health is not something that was talked about. And even say you go to a cousin, a father, or just anyone of authority and you tell them I'm not feeling well, for them they're like, okay, what are the physical signs and symptoms? Because they knew what they knew then. So there was the lack of information, and that's why we weren't able to have these conversations. But as you get older and as we upgrade in terms of the information that is out there, then we become more aware about what to do with the information that we have. So I think for family, it all stemmed down to not having enough information about mental wellness. Of course, it can be pointed out to so many other things, but just that lack of information and them doing what they knew best with the information that they had.
Right. So the lack of information, and do you think because people are so busy, they're doing everything, they're not just work, work, work. They don't pay attention to the small details. You think that's a dilemma to it also?
I do. In fact, I do think that being busy and being productive has been put so much on the pedestal that we don't really understand our bodies. We're not bodily aware. We are focused on being successful on the outwards, but not really tapping in to see if we are okay with ourselves. We were taught, especially for women, to focus on, keeping the house clean or putting it intact. And so when you just exert all that energy to the external world and you're not putting anything within yourself, then that leads to a lack of awareness. And so you don't even realize when your world begins to crumble down.
Also, you don't because you are so busy, you don't even pay attention to what you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what do you think about men perspective?
From the male perspective, I do
Mhm.
think a lot of conversations need to be had because as I've gotten older and obviously interacted with men as a whole, I just noticed it's something that I noticed when I was a kid because I have two brothers. One of them did pass on, but I had two brothers, and just seeing their ability to express themselves, they weren't very good at it. And then obviously going out there and interacting with other people, I then realized that a lot of men don't know how to express themselves. Something as simple as I love you is something that they would consider weird, right? Especially to their fellow men. And so I began to ask myself internally, why is that the case? Why is it that they can't have these proper conversations, and why are they struggling with articulating themselves? And I think a big part of it is how society has programmed them. You see, statements that have been said so nonchalantly, like be a man, don't cry. I think while we are trying to make them strong, I think we need to deconstruct that and ask ourselves, what is being strong? Is being strong neglecting your own emotions for the sake of appearing a certain way in society? So for me, I guess not. I think strength looks like recognizing you have responsibilities, but being so aware of understanding, well, there's this thing that I'm going through, and being in a position to articulate it. But because of how they've been programmed from a very young age, it becomes difficult to, first of all, unlearn that and reprogram that same system. So I do think that men have a lot of work to do. I mean, both genders, but if I was to look at it, in fact, there's a study that I read, and it said that men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than a woman. And for me, when you think about that's a lot, 4 times. So for me, I begin to ask myself, where did the rain begin beating us from? So we need to start looking at the grassroots levels and working our way up from the bottom up.
Right. So you think that not when you said about men, a lot of men are killing themselves. There's so much drowning, and some of them are found in the river. And men keep quiet and they don't talk about stuff. And that's the biggest dilemma. So when you say that, do you think because it's the way our dad raised us? Do you think because they just you can be strong. What's wrong with you? You can be macho. Do you think that's a reason why, especially with us from Africa, and I
Yeah.
think even here maybe. What do you think is that's the reason why we are in that much trouble? A lot of men are just not they're giving up.
Yeah, you see, as you growing up, your parents are the version of humanity that you know of. Your world is very small and cocooned. So your parents represent something. So, for example, daughters, you will look up to your mother. So it's quite inevitable that even a father, or rather a son, would look up to their father. You should actually watch this series called The Polygamist, and you see the ripple effect of a father-son relationship. How the father was is exactly how the son ended up being. And that particular series speaks so much about what happens in society. So because most of the fathers were absent, or they knew fatherhood to be linked to material provision, they didn't know how to be there for their sons emotionally. They didn't understand emotions. They knew things to do with emotions. Women were more in tune to it. So because of that programming, then sons wouldn't know how to articulate themselves, right? So when your father tells you you need to man up, you need to be strong, then you think that that is the way of life and you think it's normal until you now go out there and realize actually this was toxic. Because sometimes you don't notice how toxic something is until you're outside that environment and you're exposed to more. So I do think a good part of it is a lot of people had absent fathers, and even if they did have present fathers, the fathers didn't really set amazing precedents to how they needed to navigate through masculinity and life as a whole.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. Um, do you have any concern about young people today?
Oh, I do. I definitely do. I definitely do. There's quite a lot, especially with social media. It's a double-edged sword. I feel like it does have its positives, but I think a lot of it is being overridden by peer pressure, and then to make it worse, there's AI. So there are a lot of concerns, and there's a way in which I think as the young people, we tend to then overly criticize previous generations. It's not that we're calling them perfect, but I feel like we're trying to deconstruct it without really seeing why they did what they did and even seeing the importance of it. So I do think there are a lot of concerns in different dynamics and dimensions as a whole.
Right. So young people are getting more in trouble because of the social media and all that. AI is going crazy, amazing. We all have to jump on it. We have to be aware as this situation keep growing. Um, Now, how can dynamic of a family, of men, women, young people overcome all this chaotic life? How can they overcome it? How can they overcome? And is there help? How can they overcome? And is there any help?
There is. I usually say that a problem said is a problem half solved. So I think we need to start creating that psychological safety net, because sometimes the problem is because we don't create those conducive environments, especially in our households, then it becomes difficult to have those conversations. And I think for us to have these conversations, then I think it starts with you. You need to ask yourself, am I a safe space to myself? Because when I'm a safe space to myself, then I'm able to extrapolate that concept to the people around me, right? And that means, am I able to answer myself honestly? So in terms of safety, it is a family to family basis, but I will recognize that there is help out there. For example, we have advocates like yourself who are talking about mental health. There's the idea of therapy. There are a lot of shows, even on Netflix, like Blue Therapy. So when you see some of these things, usually a show is a representation of what happens in reality. So I do think there is help, but I think before we extend that help to see, okay, fine, this is dire and this needs to be exalted to someone else who is actually in the field, we need to start with ourselves. And I think that's the problem. Because we've not been taught how to love ourselves and have an anchored self-concept, then we are not safe spaces. And because we are not safe spaces, we are not able to create such psychological safety nets that will allow children to express themselves. But I think the scene is changing slowly but surely. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but I'm glad that we are beginning to have these conversations. So I
That's
do say
amazing.
it's a work in progress.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, can you elaborate? I hear you say blue therapy a lot. Can you explain that?
Therapy. So it's a show on Netflix where couples were having issues within their marriage. Fiancés, couples, either they want to get married or they're married and they're having issues. So a therapist is put in the room, and one by one, like the couple, the pair go in and they talk about what's affecting their marriage. The therapist listens to both sides and is able to ask questions and provide assignments. So you see, a therapist is meant to act as a neutral party who doesn't know any of your histories and is listening to the information with a fresh perspective, a fresh pair of eyes, fresh ears. They're able to understand what's going on both ends, and they're able to provoke questions. So, of course, there were scenes where they were quite uncomfortable. Some couples noticed very uncomfortable things within the show. But I think that is a replica of what therapy is. It's not always comfortable, but with time, you notice most of the relationships were repaired. Most of them were able to get back together because of therapy. So when I think of blue therapy as a whole, though it is curated to fit Netflix, I do think it says so much about where we are as far as conversations on therapy are concerned. So therapy doesn't also have to be that when you are in the trenches. It could also be when you are doing great for yourself, because in that success, maybe you're anchoring your identity to your success. So again, there are different ways to go about it, but that show is a show I'd highly recommend, and it just helps us to just have different, a 360-degree perspective of everything.
Right. So, in other words, there are shows out there that you can watch to help you with, like therapy, the way you're saying blue therapy and all
Yeah.
that. Somebody, I sent you a chat. Did you see? I sent you a chat a little bit. Did you see my
I'll have
chat?
to check it out. Let me check it out.
I sent you a chat. Did you see it?
Not yet. Let me see. Let me check after the live, because when I check now, it tends to,
Or it's going away? Okay.
yeah.
I send you a question for you. So,
Right.
now with the way the demographic of young people and the chaos of what's going on, what is that particular advice you can give young people to be able to overcome stresses that goes on at home, the stresses that goes on at school, the system? You're talking about high school, you're talking about colleges and all that. So what is that one advice you can give the young people to say, hey, I know you're struggling getting your grades. I know there's competition in the social media, but this is my advice for you to overcome this and to be a better person in school, to be a better person in the community. Man, and I'm telling you, the Midwest people are smoking ganja like crazy. How can they
Yeah.
stay? Because they're mess. It's a mess. So what is that one or two advice you can give them? And I see it trickles down to also older generation.
Right. I think before we overcome something, we need to understand where is the genesis, where is it coming from? Think about it from a perspective of you're sick, right? When you're sick, you go to a doctor. And when you go to a doctor, you give them signs and symptoms. Those signs and symptoms allow them to see, okay, fine, what is the cause? Could it be that they have malaria? Could it be that they have typhoid? So they go back to the genesis, because you can only treat something when you understand the genesis. So if you're in that situation, some people are not even aware they're in chaos because they've been used to it. So when you're exposed to something for such a long time, it becomes normalcy because your body is able to adapt to it. So you need to begin to be honest with yourself. This might sound very cliche, but it all starts with awareness. Awareness can do so much for you. Being able to see, okay, fine, what is working in my life? And you see, by the time you ask yourself that question, you have to be sick of and tired of being sick and tired. You know what I mean? So it's about having the conversation. I'm a big advocate for journaling. I love writing down my thoughts, recording, whatever works for you, sitting down and figuring out, okay, what are my stresses? And once you've been able to establish what your stresses are and what is pressuring you, you do want to ask yourself genuine questions. And I'm also a very big advocate of using AI, not so that it can replace critical thinking, but if you prompt it accurately, you're able to ask yourself deeper questions, right? The stresses that I have in life, right? Why do I have them? What could be the reason? So they ask you, depending on how you prompt AI, you're able to find questions. And when you're honest with yourself from there, that's already the starting point. So I would say recognize that you are sick and tired of being sick and tired. You can jot it on paper, or you can just have a visual representation just so that you understand where you are. And then when that is done, you need to ask yourself, who is a safe space to you? Who is the one person that when I talk to, I feel seen and I feel heard, right? Because as I said, a problem shared is a problem half solved. So once you've recognized it, you want to look at who is the one person who can help me in this particular situation. And from there, they're able to obviously give you pragmatic solutions. So everyone's issues or stresses of life is going to look different, and it's going to be nuanced depending on where you are in life and what it is that you want to achieve. But if I was to give two pieces of advice, I would say recognize what the stresses are. Ask yourself genuine questions and be honest with yourself. You have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. That is awareness. Identify, secondly, someone who is a safe space for you to articulate yourself and have these conversations from there.
All right, perfect. Before we have 7 minutes for question, I have two more to go. But before I
Yeah.
continue, Ivy, I see a special person that you need to know is in your city. I want him
Oh,
to ask you a question or say hello. This man, you have to know him. Maybe you already know David. David is in your city. David, you
yes,
have any question for Abby? You have a comment? Because I know you maybe go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? No,
yes,
Yes.
I'm enjoying this. It's a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful platform. Actually, I know Abby. She shared this.
Yes.
Yeah, she
You know
invited me to
Abby.
the call. So thank you. I'm listening. I'm soaking it up, sponging it up.
Right. And
mm,
she's very good. MC, we're gonna work together. We'll be coming down there. I owe you a visit. We'll talk. So good. So
yes.
Yeah,
have,
you
thank
guys
you
are
so
doing
much.
wonderful. I'm enjoying myself. Keep up the good
Perfect.
work. Thank you.
Perfect.
Um,
And I'll
thank
share
you.
this in audio so people will be hearing, oh, David was in the house. Our
Yeah.
celebrity, the man of the house. That's perfect. So now how can we overcome all this chaos? Do we take a step back and say, I've been a mess here? Do I take a step back and say, man, I've been trying this job, I've been trying this relationship, I've been trying this career. Is it important for me to take a step back and think? And how do you do that?
Absolutely. I do think it's important for you to take a step back because sometimes when you're in the midst of chaos, you're not able to see it properly. But when you step out, then you have a vantage position. You're able to see everything from a bird's eye view. So maybe if, for example, you're in a toxic work environment, I wouldn't just tell someone to quit, especially if they don't have a safety net. I don't think that's wise financially, especially if you have bills to pay, but maybe that looks like taking a week off from work, right? Because by the time you've noticed you're in so much chaos and you need to stop, your body is communicating something, right? So that looks like maybe taking time off. And if you can't take time off, maybe curate time, create time for just figuring out, okay, whether it's your weekend and just asking yourself, what's happening here? What's draining me? What exactly is making this environment toxic, or what's making my life chaotic? Because depending on who you are, depending on where you are in life, chaos may look different for different people. So that looks like taking a week off. That looks like asking yourself those genuine questions of what is chaotic about my life. So the most practical way would be just take time off from work if you can and sit down with yourself, because we look for answers in other places that we forget to ask ourselves. We should be our most trusted source because your body knows how it feels and it communicates that to you. But again, because we haven't established that awareness within ourselves, then it becomes difficult. And that is why we keep going to people as though they have the answers, but we really do within us. We do have the answers.
Right, perfect. As a communicator and as somebody who is empowering people already, uh, overcoming the fear of judgment and speaking with presence. How can somebody do that?
So before overcoming, I'm always a big advocate of where is the source? Where is it coming from? And there's a study that talks about the spotlight effect. So the spotlight effect is just a tendency to believe or just to overestimate how important you are, how your voice or your presence impacts other people. So let me explain that. If, for example, you do a presentation, this presentation, either it didn't go so well or it did go well, we tend to ruminate and think that, wow, people are going to think about us an hour from now, 2 hours from now. So there's a way in which we overestimate that. But in reality, a lot of people think about it for a moment. They may comment, they may say, oh, this was amazing, or this needed improving, and they go about their lives because everyone has their own angst or has their own problems. But because we can only be in our own bodies, we tend to think, oh, I messed up here. So even 5 years down the line, you're reminding yourself the mistake that you made 5 years ago. So the spotlight effect just simply it's just a tendency to overestimate our importance. So a cure to that is understanding if roles were reversed, would you think too much about it? If, for example, a friend had was eating and they happen to have some remnants within their teeth, they'll just tell them, hey, you do have something here, you can clean that out. And that's about it. You won't think about it an hour from now or even 10 minutes from now. If the roles were reversed, you wouldn't think too much of it. But because we're in our own bodies, we're going to overestimate the gravity that that comment had on us. So I think a good way to maybe overcome this is ask ourselves, if the roles were reversed, would I think too much about this? The truth is I wouldn't. So once we recognize the fear, which is spotlight effect, then we can ask ourselves, actually, if roles were reversed, I wouldn't care too much. I would just tell you and we would move on. So even if you were to remind me a day later, I'm like, what? You said like, it's not in mind. So another thing that I feel like is the problem is, as human beings, we are egocentric. Again, it's all narrowed down to feeling that we are the most important thing, when literally we're just a drop in the ocean. So what I would say is focus on the impact that you're creating, not on yourself. So if, for example, you're speaking about the importance of, say, climate, or not maybe the impact of climate change in today's age, you'd focus on how am I saying this word, how am I pronouncing it? But really, if my goal is to educate you so that you know better and make deliberate choices, then I've changed the subject of focus from myself to the information that I have. This information that I have is meant to create impact in what it is that you do. So when you do shift the focus, it could be the same situation, but when you shift the focus and you focus on the impact, it allows you to overcome the fear that we have, the fear of judgment, which is more about us than the work it is that we do.
Wow, amazing. So my last question and conversation is going to be, how do you master the art of likability and connections? How do you do that?
Likability and community. So what I would say is, this is actually one of Chaldean's principles of communication. He calls it the 6 principles of persuasion. And likability can be established in so many ways, not just by the way you talk, but even your energy. I don't know if you've ever met people and just by the way they smile, by the way they talk, you instantly like them. It's because of the warmth in their voices. So people usually underestimate the whole idea of tonality. You know, I can correct you. I could be saying the same information in different tones and it delivers different messages, right? So I think it's just to also watch on the tone that people use when you're talking to someone, right? You can correct someone and say, I recognize that this is what you did, and maybe this is how you need to do it because of A, B, C, D. But when you go ahead and reprimand someone and say, this is wrong, you see, the tone is different. I may be saying the same information, but because of how I'm saying it and because of my intonation, then you're likely to land it differently. So likability is in terms of your tone. It's also about the value that you create. A lot of people, we're in an environment that focuses on taking. So when you talk about networking, one of the reasons why people don't like it is because it's become too transactional. You meet someone and right off the bat, they'll be like, I want this, I want that, just because maybe you're a great person in a certain field. And instead of asking, what value can I create? They're very quick to take. And that is why the best that such people would give you maybe is a picture or just 1, 2, 3, and they disappear. Why? Because you're interested in taking. So I usually say to establish likability, you need to be able to offer value. What is the one thing that you've noticed about their brand that needs help? So for example, there's someone that said, I study successful people to know what it is that they lack. Because when you know what it is that they lack, you're able to provide a solution to that. And so that makes you instantly valuable. And when you're valuable, people are likely to help you. You see, people endorse people they like. because of the value that they create. So we need to begin shifting the conversation of what is it that they can do for me and how can I offer value today? How can I create impact in their lives positively? When you shift the focus again, that establishes likability, and likability breeds trust. And trust is a long-term asset in both businesses, entrepreneurship, in corporate spaces, and that will also allow you to be trusted even when you communicate something because of the value you've generated.
Awesome.
Right.
Before I close this chapter, because I want to make it shorter so I can share later. Anyone, man, before last comment from Abby, anyone with a question for her in the group? Thank you for joining. I appreciate you. Anyone with a question, burning question? Okay, nobody. So what is that burning? I want to, first of all, before you give your last comment, I want to appreciate you. I'm introducing you officially. I'm glad David knows who you are. You told me you're an MC, a public speaker. We're going to be working with you a lot. I know David the same. What is that last comment you want to tell us? And then as in the process, give us your social media handles so people can go there and check you out.
So what I would say is, it sounds very simple, but do it scared. I think a lot of us have these dreams and visions, and we always talk about them. But because, again, we're afraid of perception, we're afraid of what people say, those are the things that make you retreat or not do exactly what you are called to do. So I would tell people, do it scared, do it anyway, because by the end of the day, we're all going 6 feet down. Now, that might sound morbid and maybe even pessimistic, but it's a reality that all of us are going to face. And they say, there's someone that said the richest place on earth is the funeral homes, simply because a lot of people end up not living life to their fullest or being fruitful in their purpose. And so a part of it is because of fear, right? So when you master the idea of just doing it anyway, and you have visibility, because let me say this, visibility is currency. When you are visible in what it is that you do, then that is how you grow, that is how you become competent, and that is how you are able to eventually achieve the desires of your heart. So I would say, do it scared. There is no one in this life that is fearless. We do it anyway because we choose, because we choose. And choosing is a privilege that we need to take advantage of in this day and age.
Oh my goodness, perfect. So what
Right.
is your, that's amazing conversation today. We bring you forth. What is your social media handles?
On social media handles, it's Abby_Olando. ABBY_. Let me put that on the chat. Abby_Olando. Both on TikTok and Instagram.
Perfect. I appreciate you very, very much for coming through. God bless. We'll be working together moving forward. Thank you so very much. So if anyone doesn't have a